Okay, welcome Janice and welcome Connie. Everyone is on mute, just like last week, and we are recording this conversation. So if you have any questions to ask, go ahead and put it in the chat room and I monitor those. And I'm going to turn this over to Greg.
Thank you, Lori, and welcome everybody. Greg Williford here, coming in to you from the beautiful Long Beach Peninsula in Southwest Washington. And I am your co-facilitator for our second Thursday night conversation series. Those of you that were here last week, welcome back. Those of you that are new, welcome to this week's conversation. And my co-facilitator is Father Fred Hurd. Say hello, Fred.
Hello there.
Coming to you from Salem, Oregon, right next to Bush Pasture Park. And the executive producer or the technical director is Ms. Lori Cole. And she said hello already. Say hello again, Lori. And you're from Salem? Coming in from Salem?
Yes.
Okay. So there we are, and welcome. Tonight's topic is going to be on the topic of racism and white supremacy. But just as a couple of reminders that in Zoom, use the chat box if you want to take a question or ask a question, or if you want to come off mute, you may. You just find your space in there and feel free to come off mute and ask any questions that you have. This is a conversation. Again, it's not a book club, and it's not a class. And to also be mindful of our agreements that we talked about, and that is speak from your experience, use I, listen to learn, value the group, enormous amount of wisdom here, and be aware of your impact. Those are also found on our Facebook page if you want to see the actual detail. The goal of the conversation is to end racism. It's a high call, it's a big call, but we're serious about it. And this is our second conversation to do that, and we plan to do this for a good year and beyond. So we're going to work together to name it. We started that last week. We're going to try our best to understand it, heal from it, and then learn strategies to really dismantle and end racism when we see it. What do we know so far? We named racism. We need to get comfortable with that as white people, those of us that are white. We learned the term white fragility, and that's that weird feeling that we get oftentimes as white people when we talk about race. Makes us uncomfortable, makes us defensive. We're very uninformed on the history and impact of racism we understood last week, and we have a hard time really seeing racism because of how we as white people are socialized. So we must learn new narratives and thinking, and that is really the path that we're on in the weekly conversations. Our view of racism is highly simplistic as white people. And we learned the importance of racial empathy. And I think it was Galen that asked the question, what does that look like in the chat box tonight? What does that look like? And racial empathy is about walking in the shoes of people of color. It's about understanding the term we use, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, what it's like in America to be that way, to have that color of skin. It is different. What does it look like? It looks like what a person of color feels when they drive by a police officer and they wonder if they're going to get stopped, because it happens more frequently than to people that are not of color. They wonder if they're going to be asked when they're out walking in a neighborhood, they're going to be asked by the police to say, who are you? Show me your ID, and where do you live? And that doesn't happen to most of us. So it's about being empathetic. It's just, remember, it's empathy. It's about really, it's not sympathy, it's empathy. Being able to walk in someone else's shoes and to feel their feelings of what it must be like. To be denied housing because of your color. To be given inadequate medical care because of your color. What is that like? Because as a white person, it doesn't happen to us. It doesn't happen to us. Hopefully that answers your question. Good question, by the way.
Greg, we also had another question from Carl Browning, who said, how can we talk about racial problems and not talk about politics?
Well, as long as you can, I guess, give it in your frame of speak for yourself, but don't make it a political conversation. I agree. It's today in our country, we are highly polarized because of the political winds that are blowing and how they cross over into racism, into pretty blatant racism. So I think as long as we focus, as long as the topic is on racism and what we're trying to do to end it and dismantle it, it's certainly okay to make those connections to politics. Talking strictly about politics or having expressions that would indicate a certain political position, that's probably not appropriate. Fred, I don't know if you wanted to add on to that or if anyone else does, without talking about politics.
It would be really easy in these times to get into a heavy political discussion right now. And, you know, one of the things that I've noticed, and of course in Portland, which is about 45 miles from where I live, where they've been so many demonstrations over the last 100 days plus, it was, you know, people were concerned that the mission of what Black Lives Matter was trying to stress would be lost because of extraneous things. And that's what we don't want to do, is get into a debate, a political debate or a religious debate that is going to take our focus off of what we're trying to do in terms of these conversations.
Thank you, Fred. And thanks, Lori, for pulling that question out of the chat. These are our understandings. These will go on to our Facebook, but it's really the topic of racism and white supremacy. And I think you may be surprised how these are really defined. The key terms, our list continues to grow. It will grow every week, and we're adding these on again to the Facebook link, and it'll just, these words, these key terms, racism, white supremacy, discrimination, prejudice, whiteness, and white privilege are going to be added in, and they'll be discussed this evening. And Fred, you're up.
Thank you, Greg. I'm so happy to see all of you here tonight. You know, one of the things that we've talked about is that we are not going to, we're not going to avoid the things that happen during the months that we're together, perhaps years that we're together in these conversations. And one this week involved the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so certainly she is a presence, and some of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight were things that she will be remembered for all of the history of the United States with the work that she did on the Supreme Court. You know, I'm just going to talk just very briefly about socialization and the social structure of race. When we're born into, we are a certain race. I'm white. Greg is white. Laurie is white. And you know, we're perhaps African Americans. We're Asian. But we're born, and there's nothing that we can do about the color of our skin. Many years ago, I read a book called, I think it was Black Like Me. I think that was the book, where someone tried to pass as a Black person in the South and experience some of the things that African Americans were going through at that time. And it was a long time ago when I read this book. So it was certainly before the 60s and the things that we remember as that brought change. But he painted himself, and he did some pretty fancy makeup, and was able to be arrested, as I recall, and there were a number of things that happened to him that he was able to experience. So race is something that we are born with. But then there's another part of this called socialization. And you know, we look at the list And for those of you that have the book White Fragility, you'll see a list in there of socialization. And you look at it, you think, old, okay, old is, there's nothing you can do about that. You're born, you get old. There's young, there's male, female, gay, straight. There's people as they live their lives who are educated or who are poorly educated. There's rich, poor. Well, some of these things take on, there's some things that can't be avoided, like getting old, like being young when you are born, and then you get a little older and you're a teenager and you're in your 20s. But there are other things that happen, like maybe you're poor, and can that be avoided? Well, that's going to be something that we're going to explore as we move along. Some of us are able-bodied, some of us have disabilities. Some of us are spiritual, some of us are not spiritual. Some of us are healthy. I heard a thing today on NPR about Alzheimer's and what they were saying in terms of African Americans, that they're more susceptible to Alzheimer's. Why? We don't know why. And there's some exploration that's going on in that. So, you know, some of these things can change, and some of these things, simply because of where we live, are going to be different as far as socialization is concerned. But Greg and I, when we first started talking about this series, we were talking about somebody who was educated. And then Greg paused and he said, well, that's assuming you could afford to be educated. And so that's certainly something that we're going to be talking about as we go along. So socialization, unlike race, there's some parts of socialization that perhaps we might have some control over, and other parts of it we don't. But socialization is a very important part of what we're going to be talking about.
Thank you, Fred. Are you guys ready for the first round of breakout conversations on the topic of race and racism? Lori, if you want to put them into groups, we have almost 30, so it's going to be similar. And the first question really for conversation tonight on the topic of race and racism, pretty broad, but it's an interesting one, especially with this audience that we have tonight. It's a very nice, diverse mix of race, age, and gender. How has race impacted your life? If you struggle with that, why?
I'm putting you all in rooms, and I may be switching you out of one room and putting you in the other. So just flow. Here you go.
And this is going to be only about 5 minutes or so, probably 5 to 8 minutes max.